Mercury retrograde is here. I'm actually recording this video on February 26th, which is the day that Mercury is stationing retrograde in Pisces. And if you have been around the astrology world, the witchy world, then you probably know that Mercury gets a really bad rap for messing things up. I always like to think of Mercury as this misunderstood trickster. People are always blaming Mercury during this time of year, which actually happens 3 times every year. Blamed for tech glitches, communication problems, messing up your travel plans, to not sign contracts. It creates a lot of drama around the delays. But here's my perspective. I don't believe that any planet is ever out to get me. I personally am an animist in my practice, and so part of that is building a relationship with all of the planets as beings, not as enemies or gods that are trying to punish me. And I truly believe and have seen in my own life that working with Mercury retrograde is a key hack for creative success, creative expansion, creative abundance, and also just expansion in our mind and the way that we see the world and the way that we see ourselves. So if you're in a phase where you're trying to shift from the way that you think everything has to be, the options that you think are available to you, to a more abundant mindset where you're actually receiving new ways of experiencing the world, new ways of creating, you definitely want to work with Mercury retrograde, and you want to stay tuned to this video because I'm going to be telling you exactly how to work with this energy, not only for creative expansion and creative growth, but also for growing around your connections, your relationships, and your identity. If you're new to my channel, my name is Ash. I am a astrologer and a coach, and I primarily work with neurodivergent people who are in a transitional phase, usually coming out of a relationship of some kind and deepening into their self, into their self-expression, into their creative self-expression, and just remembering who they really are deep down inside. If that sounds like the kind of content that you're interested in, then please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and definitely head to my feed because I've been creating some really amazing content this year about creative practice, trusting yourself, and becoming the person that you're meant to be. So all of the planets actually go retrograde. The sun and the moon don't because they're not technically planets, but Mercury goes retrograde 3 times a year, Venus goes retrograde every other year, Saturn goes retrograde every year. I could go on, but the point that I want to make here is that we notice Mercury retrograde the most because it goes retrograde more frequently, but also for shorter periods of time, okay? So when Mercury is retrograde, the entire process, the entire storyline is what I like to think of it, actually lasts for about 2 months, and that happens 3 times a year. So that actually means that for about half of the year, every year, we are under the energy of some kind of Mercury retrograde. So this is something that we're very familiar with. We actually are always working with it. We just become more conscious of it during that short period of time when we're noticing delays, tech problems, and the other kinds of nefarious things that we blame Mercury for. So what is the best way to actually work with Mercury retrograde? This period of time is perfect for reflecting and reviewing, which all creative people, and honestly all people in general, should be spending a lot more time doing. This is something that I hear all of the time when I work with people, and I suggest this as an idea, taking some time to consciously reflect and review on your work, on what's working for you, on what's been successful, on the areas that you want to grow. most people are not taking the time to do this. And that's actually part of the reason why we find Mercury retrograde to be so frustrating, because we live in a culture that's always about more, on to the next thing, getting the next thing done, checking the next thing off of the list. And we are not so skilled at taking time to celebrate what's working, to reflect on what's actually working, to actually find the abundance in what we've already created, which is so key to expanding as a creative person or in any kind of work that you want to do without burning yourself out. And to be honest, this is exactly what I've been doing today. I've been going back over on all of the YouTube videos that I have published this year. I've been linking them up on my website because I'm taking this time to make an experiment of actually stepping away from Substack, because I've been publishing on Substack for the past few years and I'm just kind of over the platform. Rather than just like making a decision to quit Substack right now, I'm using this time to just step back, reflect on what I've already created, what's really working well for me in my creative flow. And then around April, when the cycle is over with, I'll actually make some final decisions. If that sounds like something you want to learn how to do, it's exactly what I'm going to explain to you right now. So Mercury retrograde always happens in 3 acts. And this is actually something that's really common in astrology in general, is that a story will happen in 3 acts. So if you're familiar with like plays or novels, you have like some kind of English background, which is what I do, then this is going to be a familiar concept to you in general, just in terms of like how stories unfold. So act 1 is always where the stage is being set, right? This is where there's foreshadowing about what's to come later in the book and what we need to be paying attention to and which characters are important, okay? So Act 1 happens when Mercury enters the pre-retrograde shadow up until the day that Mercury stations retrograde. So we just finished Act 1 of this story. It began on February 11th when Mercury entered the pre-retrograde shadow around 8 degrees Pisces. And this entire Mercury retrograde is going to be happening in the sign of Pisces. I tend to think of Pisces as like the poet, the imaginative one, the one who's like the daydreamer. So there could even be things that you've been reflecting on, daydreaming. You could have even been reflecting on how your dreams are coming together, feeling a sense of, confusion around how things are going to move forward, feeling like you don't have all of the information that you need. These are all very common things to experience during a Mercury retrograde in general, but definitely a Mercury retrograde that's happening in the sign of Pisces. All right. So there were a couple, the one main date that I want to pull out as significant was February 12th. Mercury was conjunct to the North Node on that day. And so around that period of time, you could have especially been thinking about, how do I move forward? What's the direction that I want to go? And feeling like you didn't have all of the information that you needed to actually make a decision at that time. But you might have also been taking some steps to fulfill your destiny, to align with your fate, and just taking some bets on yourself between February 11th and February 26th, all right? So now Mercury is actually retrograde, and it's going to remain retrograde until March 20th, all right? So a few weeks here where Mercury is actually going to be going back over what has happened since February 11th, right? So this is a great time to like look back. If you keep a journal, if you keep a calendar, just reflect back on what has happened in your life over the past few weeks and how is that aligning with what you're noticing shifting over the next few weeks. Now, while Mercury is retrograde, it can feel like we are losing momentum sometimes, but this is the part that is really important. All right. So during this Act 2 period of time, we are not losing momentum. We're getting an opportunity to go back over. So that's exactly what I was talking about that I'm doing today. I'm going back over the work that I have been doing, and I'm creating new things out of it. I'm creating more abundance out of what I have already made. I am taking the videos that I have already made and I'm using that to create more content for myself. I'm looking at what videos performed really well and how do I want to come back around to some of those ideas again in the coming weeks. This is a smart way to work with Mercury retrograde. And it's very different from the general advice that people usually give you about Mercury retrograde, which is like, wait, pause, don't take action on things. I mean, get real. We can't always do that, right? We sometimes can delay taking action, but I actually don't think that the delay is the most important part of the story. And I want to talk a little bit more about why that is later on. So we're going to shift towards that in a minute, but I want to continue to tell you how to work with this Mercury retrograde. So during the Mercury retrograde period of time, there's a few key dates. So March 7th is when we're going to have Mercury in alignment with the sun. This is called a Mercury cazimi. And I usually think of this as a day where we're receiving some insights, we're receiving some guidance, we're receiving some information that we've maybe been waiting on to be able to take action. And sometimes it can be like a secret is revealed, but it's usually, for me, it's a opening in my own mind of, oh, I could do this way, okay? And then March 15th, Mercury is going to make a conjunction to Mars. So we could be frustrated. We could be feeling like pressure to take action around this period of time. And we could also be letting go of something around this period of time in order to align with that destiny, with the fate that is coming back around on March 17th, when Mercury is going to make a conjunction to the North Node again, just like it did on February 12th. So definitely you want to look on around February 12th, that week. Anything that was significant in your life around decisions you're making around your future could be important for you to look at for this particular Mercury retrograde. And then on March 20th, Mercury will station direct. This is the end of Act 2, okay? So if you think about it as a story, Act 2 is where a lot of the action happens, right? So Act 1 is where like the stage is being set. This is the part that everybody ignores. Everybody pays a lot more attention to the action-packed time that's happening during Act 2. But if you use Act 1 wisely, or you actually reflect back on what happened during Act 1, you can save yourself a lot of heartache during Act 2 of the story. Then Act 3 is after Mercury stations direct, so between March 20th and April 9th, when Mercury exits its post-retrograde shadow at 22 degrees Pisces, okay? So during Act 3, Mercury is going to make an alignment with the North Node one more time, and that is going to happen on March 23rd. So this is that, final decision, that final conversation that really aligns us with the direction that we're going to be moving forward individually and as a collective. This is where we experience resolution to the story and where we actually are able to take those final actions that we maybe weren't able to take during Act 2. So let's talk a little bit about this idea of I need to delay, I need to wait for the right time, I need to pause and wait for the exact right time to take action. This is something that's really, really popular when people talk about Mercury retrograde. It's also just really popular when people talk about astrology in general. We're all waiting for the right time, okay? And one of the things that bothers me about this is that sometimes we're waiting and waiting and waiting for this mythical right time, and it just ends up keeping us stuck in a place that we don't need to stay stuck in. All right. And one of the main places that I see this show up for people is where they will stay in a situation like a relationship or a job or a living situation way past the timeline that they should, because they're waiting for this right time. And I'm calling myself out on this too, because this has definitely been something that I have struggled with. It's something that I struggled with as like an up and coming astrologer, where I was going through a life experience where I kept like looking for my chart to reveal to me the right time to end something. And if I would have trusted my intuition, which was telling me to say, it's time for me to move on, and I would have released this idea of this mythical right time, I would have saved myself literally years of heartache and grief and frustration, okay? So when people tell you to delay, or they are talking about like divine timing and this is when it's the most aligned time, I want you to take that information really truly with a grain of salt, because moving at the right time is super overrated. Moving gradually, trusting yourself, building the capacity to really know that you have your best interest at heart and that you are the one who's in charge of making the right decisions for yourself. Very, very underrated, especially in this world of astrology and manifestation and divine timing. It's not that I don't believe in divine timing and fate. I absolutely do. I have seen it play out in my own life. I've seen it play out in the lives of my clients. And I've also seen the dark side of waiting too long, repeating the same patterns over and over again because it never feels like there's a right time. There usually doesn't feel like a right time to make hard decisions, like stepping away from something that gives you a sense of security, even if that sense of security is not the real security that you believe that it is. Sometimes we stay in relationships, jobs, living situations that we feel like this is the only security that we have available to us in our life, and we're limiting the potential. We're limiting our options because we're only looking at what we have now, and we're buying into the story that there's nothing better for us out there. But I know from living this in my own life, and definitely seeing it in my clients' lives as I've been working with them over years, that when you actually start to open up to your real vision for what you want to create in your life, and you start gradually orienting yourself towards that vision, this is when the magic happens. The magic doesn't happen in the perfect timing because we waited the right amount of time and now suddenly everything is going to come together. Keep taking small actions towards your vision. Even during this period of time when Mercury is retrograde, I don't personally think that you need to avoid anything. I believe that you're going to be guided to making the decisions that you need to make. And the key is really to trust yourself to do what is best for you. Make the decisions that are best for you. Don't keep yourself in this void state, this liminal state, just because it doesn't feel like it's the right time. If you find my teaching to be helpful, you find the guidance that I share every week to be really grounding and to really shift your perspective on how you can be a creator of your life, how you can be a more abundant creator in your work and your creative hobbies and your personal practices, then I want to invite you to join Spiritual Being, which is a group that I run. Every week we have 2 calls. One is where I provide direct guidance and coaching on your goals, your vision, how to create the life that you want to create and move through these obstacles that you feel like are blocking you. And then we also do rituals every week on Wednesdays, where I share more about the astrology that is happening right now inside of Spiritual Being. We already talked about Mercury retrograde, and we talked about how to work with Act 1 of the story before it even began. I'm really setting you up for success by giving you a head start on the story so that you're not figuring it all out as it's happening, but you're stepping into that awareness and how you can work with the energy from Act 1. If you're interested in learning more about spiritual being, I'll have an explanation of that in the description of this video. I also offer sessions and packages, and all of the information about that is on my website. I would love to work with you this year. If you have stuck around to the end of this video, be sure to like and subscribe to my channel, and I will be seeing you very soon.